Welcome to This is the Jet Life with Dan Burnham, your guide to the New York Jets, sports, and much more. And now, your host, Dan Burnham.
What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of This is the Jet Life. We are here following a New York Jets victory yet again, 3 weeks in a row, this time against the Packers. Jets win 27-10 in Lambo. This was an extremely fun game for so many reasons. The defense was rocking. We overcame some horrible refereeing in this game. We had awesome play calls. So many guys looked good. Breece Hall, we're going to get into everybody, but what a fun freaking game. And 3 in a row, to be 4-2, one of the better records in the entire NFL. Looking at the playoff picture right now, beating Aaron Rodgers, big stage. I mean, we called this like a litmus test for the Jets going into this week, saying this would be a big gauge for them. If they can beat a defense like this, an offense like this, veteran quarterback, we're not talking Skylar Thompson, Kenny Pickett anymore. We're talking Aaron Rodgers in his home field. And the Jets took the win. It was awesome. I can't wait to get into this podcast. So for those of you joining via audio, it's worth noting that we are also broadcasting this via video. I got Paycheck here in the house. What up, Paycheck?
I'm happy.
How could you not be happy? It was, we were just like, we got to do one for this big win. Are you kidding me? Jets Nation is flying right now. When we missed last week, we didn't do a video of that one, just did audio. But this week, we get to celebrate a little bit. And it's going to be a fun podcast episode, I'm telling you right now. Katie's got her awesome Jets sweatshirt on. I got no special apparel. Got the Yankees hat, too. We got the game going secretly in the corner. The Yankees are currently winning against the Cleveland Guardians. We're going to see what happens in that game as it goes on. Hopefully there's no outlandish remarks from us or, giant jumps for joy. But by the time you're hearing this podcast, the Yankees hopefully have already clinched this series, and they're moving on to play the Astros. So before we begin this podcast, I need to remind you to rate, review, subscribe to this podcast anywhere podcasts are found. The podcast title is Gangrene Nation Podcast. The series title is This is the Jet Life. You can follow me on Twitter at Jets_Dan. And also, please follow on Twitter. This is the Jet Life. Podcast title is going to be, Jets beat the Packers and then Broncos preview, something along those lines. You'll find it'll be in there, but subscribe, like, comment, any of that good stuff, engage, always helpful. And that's all I got. We can get into it. Not sure exactly if we're going to be doing a video podcast next week or not. We're kind of going up in the air right now with Paycheck and myself, and we're going to figure out as the weeks go on with our schedules, and perhaps outcomes may play a factor in it all, but we will get it sorted out. It's going to be a typical podcast like always. We're going to do news and nuggets. We're going to talk positives, negatives, overall vibes of the team. We're going to do a father time. We're going to do an AFC East check-in and then talk offense, defense, special teams. Preview that Broncos game upcoming next week and close this thing out. 3-game winning streak for your New York Jets. Didn't think it was possible. How far we've come in such a short amount of time from training camps and the thoughts going into this whole thing to where we are right now. I mean, it's crazy, Katie, isn't it? Do we ever think we'd be 4-2 right now where we're at?
It's been a while.
It has been a while, Katie. You are absolutely right. And it's awesome to be here, floating on top again, looking at things like the playoffs. Fun time of year. So let's get into news and nuggets around this Jets team. Starting with Connor McDermott, our not-so-good left and right tackle who's caught a touchdown pass at tight end. He's a turnstile. This guy has played 65 snaps this year. 2 penalties, 1 sack allowed. You don't want him out there. The Jets decide to move Mike Remmers, the journeyman, and this is his 6th team now, move him up to the active roster. They cut Connor McDermott. Tomorrow's his birthday, actually, his 30th birthday, so they cut him 2 days before his birthday.
Yikes.
Yeah, it was a little, what are you going to do? It's a business. He understands. He's made millions, but they re-signed Connor McDermott to the practice squad, so he is not unemployed for his birthday. Mike Remmers is on the active roster. We are his 6th team. He's played both tackle positions. He's played guard in the past, so he's got a little bit of versatility. He's got a little bit more veteran wisdom, a little bit more consistent. His stats actually aren't horrible playing with the Giants, the Vikings, the Chiefs, a couple teams over the years, and so he should be a good depth addition for that offensive line. You look at the tackles, you got Dwayne Brown, you got AVT, you got George Fant coming back, Max Mitchell eventually coming back. This is essentially 5th string. This is below probably even where Chuma Adoga was last year, so not a super important one, but given the injury history we've had at that position, very important to have good guys in queue so that we don't have to run with a guy like Connor McDermott again. So That was one big move there. The Jets also signed former Bills linebacker Andre Smith, who's just coming off a suspension, 25 years old, played 27 games in the last 2 years, mostly a special teamer for them. We'll see what he can bring to this unit. We've got a lot of AFC and NFC games and matchups going on, and it's really important when the two conferences play each other interconference because the Jets are looking at the playoffs, and we need as many teams in the AFC to lose as possible. So every time there's an AFC-NFC matchup, we got to root NFC all the way, especially with the parity in the league right now because you've got so many teams with 2 wins, 3 wins, some with 4, that the Jets are only 1 or 2 losses away from being out of the playoffs, and any one of these teams below could be the one taking their spot. So when you look at it this week, you had the Giants beating the Ravens. That was huge for the Jets' playoff race. You had the Vikings beating the Dolphins for the Dolphins' 3rd straight loss. That was huge. And, there were a couple other teams that did win. The Bengals ended up finding a way to beat the Saints this week. The Steelers found a way to beat the Bucs. Not great there. But the Jets beat the Packers. That's the biggest one, of course. And then last bit of news. Starting 2023, it was announced today that Prime Video will be picking up a Black Friday game, 3 p.m. on Friday. First Friday game they're going to have on the schedule. It's kind of cool.
Love it.
That's what I said, too, because I'm always looking for a reason to get another good primetime matchup in, and it's a Friday when I don't have work. I would rather it be like 8 p.m. so I could just chill out. Like 3 p.m. middle of the day is kind of like, all right, well, I guess I'm doing nothing today just watching that one game. But, hey, at least it's another good football game we're going to have, and potentially like could be a tradition that they do every year, the big Black Friday game. So that is our news and nuggets around this New York Jets team. Now we got to talk positives of the Jets, and there are plenty of them. We've been talking about a lot of them. I mean, there's a million positives I could be talking about right now, specific players and whatnot. But what I want to focus on is those baby Jets can fly. See Robert Saleh referring to these young core nucleus of the Jets as the baby Jets. We'll be doing the same, and they can fly. We got Offensive Rookie of the Year, Breece Hall. Lock it in now. This guy's dynamite. Sauce Gardner, probably Defensive Rookie of the Year. I would be willing to lock that in if it wasn't for Tariq Woolen having an awesome cornerback season in Seattle right now. And then you got Michael Clemens this week showing up. It's a mixture. We've had Max Mitchell sometimes. Jeremy Ruckert had a nice play or two here and there. We've had Jermaine Johnson making plays. Garrett Wilson had a big game. Everybody's doing their part. This week, Michael Clemens with a huge punt block. This baby Jets group is awesome. So got to feel great about that. Feeling really good about Mike LaFleur and the whole offensive system. Just the way that they're able to kind of like limit all of Zach Wilson's involvement, keep the turnovers down, and do what should be predictable to other teams. It should be predictable that we're going to rely on Breece Hall, Michael Carter, some trick plays maybe here and there to Braxton Berrios. And for some reason, the stuff still seems to catch people off guard. And you could tell that Mike LaFleur was absolutely doing some good stuff against the Packers coach, his own brother, Matt LaFleur, struggling at some of those play calls where the Packers just looked lost, and the Jets was like that trap play to Breece Hall was absolutely play calling and play design. He's got the speed and acceleration to get the touchdown, but 10 yards, 15 yards of that was just schemed up entirely by, Mike LaFleur. So that was awesome to see. Very, very positive on that whole offensive unit right now. Quinnen Williams, he's been incredible. I said before this season began, expect him to have his best season of his career because for the first time he was coming in as a veteran without any injuries in training camp, so going to be fully strengthened up to full speed right away, and he has not disappointed at all. This guy has at least a half a sack in the last 5 games. He has the most sacks of any interior defensive lineman in the NFL and is tied for the 11th most sacks overall, which would never be held by a defensive tackle. It'll always be an edge rusher, outside linebacker, or defensive end. But to have Quinnen Williams in that conversation ahead of guys like Aaron Donald or any other interior defensive lineman that you can find, that's awesome. And he's stopping the run. He's getting in the backfield for TFLs. He blocked a freaking field goal in this game. And the guy's doing it with his brother on the field, celebrating, having fun. He got the angry run last week, picking up the fumble, knocking off Tyreek Hill, and he actually got the scepter from Good Morning Football, which is really cool. There's a video of him on social media, celebrating with a scepter for his big stiff arm of Tyreek Hill. It's just been an awesome run for him. So great to have a guy like that, like one of the best players in the NFL right now, playing for our unit. The other most exciting thing is, right now we have to feel as Jets Nation that this team can beat anybody. We're 4-2. We struggled early on against the Baltimore Ravens, a really good team, but we've learned so much since then, since playing the Bengals. I mean, those were Joe Flacco games, and the Jets were just coming into their own. And right now, as they find their rhythm, they beat the Packers up. I think they can beat anybody. I mean, the Bills are going to be a huge test. The Patriots defense is going to be a huge test. There's some more later in the season. Even the Broncos next week is a huge test with that defense. But, like, you have to go into the game thinking the Jets can win. And when I saw the Jets 3-point underdogs to the Broncos, I put money on it instantly. I was just like, well, that's ridiculous. And the line has already changed to like 1 point. I think it went from 3.5 to 1 already because everybody's seeing that is just like, how is there no respect for this team? The Jets can easily beat the Denver Broncos and anybody else in the AFC for that matter. Coming for you, Buffalo.
They did the same with the Giants this week. They had them as the underdogs to the Jaguars. It's ridiculous.
It's like, I get that both teams have kind of been, I wouldn't say like lucky, but they haven't convinced everybody yet in their wins, and the teams that they've beaten haven't been like these huge showcase performances. But like when the Giants team is 5-1 and the Jets are 4-2 and we beat the Packers, and you look at the rest of the NFL where all of these good teams find a way to lose to bad teams or teams that are equal to them all the time. Like the Ravens are finding ways to lose. Like, we're trying to give credit to these teams as being like, oh, they're better than the Jets, they're better than the Giants. How come they're all 3-3? How come these teams are losing and the Jets and Giants are winning? It's a fun time to be a New York fan as the Yankees continue to win 5-1 now. Got another run, feeling good about that. Next big thing, the Jets are learning how to win. Something that they haven't done in so long. They're finally getting these guys on the same page and like, this is what it looks like to win. This is what it feels like. This is what preparation is like. And this is what it's like when people doubt you and think that you're not going to win and you're mismatched going into another big-time stadium like Lambeau. You can win those games. The resiliency that they're building and the camaraderie and everything in that locker room, it's huge. We talked about building the best culture in sports, and Joe Douglas started it by bringing in the right people and the right coaches, but it doesn't actually start to come to fruition until you start to win games and see the stuff working. So that's pretty awesome. They're on a winning streak, a 3-game winning streak. And then lastly, this team is so freaking fun. It's not just winning. The Giants are winning also. They're 5-1, and maybe I'm biased, but just watching this Jets experience, it seems more fun than what's going on there with the Giants. Just because we've got Sauce Gardner taking the hat, the cheese head, in Lambeau Field. He said somebody put it on his head, one of his buddies or something. He's wearing it around, dancing on the field, feeling really good until Alden Lazard knocks it off. It was just some funny stuff. No hard feelings between them, but to see that, it's crazy because it's been since like Braylon Edwards and guys like that. Maybe Antonio Cromartie for a moment here and there was pretty cocky, and Ryan Fitzpatrick with the squad. But like since 2010, 2009, since we had a real identity like that was just like, we're going to beat your butt and then we're going to make you realize that we just beat you. And do I think it was a little premature for Sauce to be wearing a cheese head in Lambeau Field after just 6 games? Possibly. But also, like, am I here for it? Absolutely. And the haters are going to be incoming as they see these Jets, and they're just like, you know what? They're getting a little too cocky, too big for their britches. And, yeah, the haters are going to come soon. So start looking for people hating on Sauce, hating on the Jets draft classes and Joe Douglas and things, because we're getting good, and it's a lot of fun. So now talking some negatives, just a few of them. Got to have a few. Zach Wilson still hasn't been tested. Hate to say it. Yeah, we're winning. People say, like, can't worry about that stuff. The team is winning. He's playing the right way at quarterback, not turning the ball over. I get it all. But, like, in reality, we haven't seen him have to win a game himself. He threw 110 passing yards in this game on 10 completions. So we haven't seen it from him necessarily. When we have to get into a shootout later in this year, if we're going to be what we want to be, we're going to have to see that. So that continues to be a negative until we see otherwise. Also, along with that, going hand in hand, is our pass catchers aren't getting a ton of opportunities. So when you only throw 10 completions, you've got guys like Elijah Moore not getting any catches, no targets. I mean, he was targeted once, but there was a penalty on the play. You got guys like Garrett Wilson getting 1 catch in this game, Corey Davis getting 2, 3 catches for the tight ends. There's just nothing to go around. These guys aren't eating, right? These wide receivers that want the ball, that are really proud people, that are like, I'm better than my guy, I want it in my hands. Zach Wilson isn't keeping them all happy. And right now we're winning, so it's okay. But eventually, push comes to shove, and people are like, listen, I got to get a contract in the future. I want to be an all-pro. I want to be a Pro Bowler, but I got to get the ball in my hands to do it. And this week we actually saw a little bit from Elijah Moore. We saw a couple tweets that I don't think were necessarily horrible, but they weren't what you'd hope to see. So we got 2 of them here, and the first one, he's responding to Rich Cimini saying, like, how did the Jets go through a game? And Elijah Moore has 0 targets. And he writes, if I say what I really want to say, I'll be the selfish guy. We're winning. Grateful. Huge blessing. All I ever wanted. Bittersweet for me, but I'll be solid. So I'll just stay quiet. Just know I don't understand either. So it's not like he was calling out the team or being, a real problem in the locker room. But the fact that he's saying, like, I don't understand either, just causes all of Jets Nation, Twitter, everybody to just be like, oh, what's going on? Trouble in paradise? And now it's become this huge storyline because everything in New York that gets legs like this just takes off. So now everybody's talking about Elijah Moore. He had to post another tweet, a response saying, I support all my teammates 100% too. They know it what it is. I'm behind them like no other. Everyone rocking out needs to keep rocking out. That's part of why we're winning. Don't get it confused either. So we had to do like a little damage control. And it just shows you that everything isn't perfect when your quarterback throws 110 yards, right? Like you can win, but there's certain guys like, say, Hollywood Brown with the Ravens that was unhappy with Lamar Jackson because he wasn't getting the ball a ton. And maybe they miss Hollywood Brown, maybe they don't. But eventually those things start to happen. Elijah Moore's a good guy. Saleh says he's not worried about him at all. I'm not worried about the other receivers right now because we are winning. But we are going to have to find a way when we have, 4 really good wide receivers and 2 really good tight ends that need to get the ball in their hands. Until we start getting it there and get some chemistry with these players, we're going to have potentially some, even if they're holding it inside, some bittersweet moments for some of these receivers. Next big negative, we got 3 big defenses in a row coming up. It's an absolute gauntlet of defenses. The Packers was hard, but next week you got the Broncos, arguably one of the best defenses in the league. I think it may be the best. Then you got the Patriots, one of the best schemed defenses in the entire league. Bill Belichick's going to make it difficult on anybody going in there, especially a young quarterback like Zach Wilson. Then you got the Bills, probably the best team in the entire NFL. Thankfully, they get a bye week after that, so you get like a chance to catch your breath and be like, that was an absolute nightmare 3-game stretch. But we're going to learn a lot about this offense because everybody knows right now the goal is to not have Zach Wilson turn it over, to have him be minimally involved in the offense and have the running game, the offensive line, the defense, special teams, and everything win the game for you. So when you play 3 defenses like this that are coached well, the Patriots and Bills specifically, and the talent the Broncos have, we're going to find out whether or not when the Jets want to run and another team knows they're running, can they do it? And can Zach Wilson carry the heavy load if the running game's not getting it done? And the last negative, the Bills are still cruising. They're 5-1. We hope they lose this week to the Chiefs, and if the Jets won, they'd be first place in the AFC East. It was this close to happening, but Josh Allen leads the comeback. Bills win. They're still in first. Jets are a playoff team right now, but only through the wild card. So that's all of our negatives. Talking overall feel, this whole thing, bringing it all together, the Jets continue to build on their theme of 2022. They have one of the best young cores in the entire NFL, and they're winning because of it. The 4-2 record isn't about Zach Wilson or any specific player for that matter. It's about legitimate, explosive playmakers on offense. It's about versatile and disciplined offensive linemen. It's about hard-hitting, fast, ball-hawking defensive players, inspirational and creative coaching, and another one of Brant Boyer's spicy special teams. It's gotten them positioned for the playoffs with more answers than questions, something that we haven't been able to say in such a long time. Usually we're sitting at this point like, what is going on? Why isn't this working? Why isn't that? Right now, it's just like, all right, how are we going to get the pass catchers involved? How are we going to make Zach Wilson comfortable? But everything else is feeling really good. How far they make it in this whole thing is going to be up to Zach Wilson and his growth and progression throughout the season. The team's midseason adjustments through coaching as other teams try to counter what we're doing best, and they say, all right, well, the Jets are winning this way, so we're going to do this. We're going to get some curveballs. We're going to have to make adjustments as well. And the overall health of the team. I'll always knock on wood when I say it, but we are one of the healthiest teams in the league. It's got to stay that way. We're lucky right now, and, just enjoy every minute of it because these things don't happen often. A team with this much juice, this much fire, energy, doesn't happen all the time. I don't know if we're going to be in the playoff race, one of the best teams, win the division. I can't tell you what's going to happen, but I can tell you right now we're 4-2. We just beat the Packers. Everybody's feeling good, and it's a great time to be a Jets fan. So that is all of my thoughts. Now I have to check in with my dad, David Burnham, for his thoughts in this week's Father Time, and I should have it printed out, but I don't. I had it printed out, didn't bring it home with me, and now I got to read it from the phone, so I apologize for the weird optics as I read it from here. But this is this week's Father Time, written by my dad, David Burnham, titled, The Secret is Out. Here we go. Green Bay was soundly beaten. They were slow and were out-muscled, outmaneuvered, outsmarted, out-hustled, and everyone on the plane had a fun ride home. But make no mistake about it, the news is out. We are finally being taken very seriously. The Jets are good. How good? No one is sure, and every week is just another test. But our Jets are meeting the challenge every day lately. There were a lot of changes in creating the 2022 Jets team, and I'm going to give credit to our fronts. The Packers couldn't handle our stunts, our power, our speed, or our tenacity. Quinnen was a maniac in every good way. But there's another reason why our defensive front was on fire. Quinnen played 67% of snaps and was out with an eye injury, otherwise it would have been a little higher. JFM played 63%, our stunt hero. Lawson played 74%, and Rankins played 60% of the snaps. These are our most effective players in the defensive line, and Jeff Ulbrich finally realized that it's okay for them to work up a sweat. Bottom line is you need to play your best players, and some guys, like Quinnen, get better as the game wears on. And through all the adjustments due to injury on the O-line, John Benton and Mike LaFleur have found continuity thanks to my personal hero and right tackle of the moment, AVT. And the quiet emergence of Nate Herbig on the right, coupled with the pairing of the new and improved Laken Tomlinson and Dwayne Brown on the left side, it's all looking very good. I can continue to hand out awards and trophies to nearly every single Jet that played on Sunday, but let's look at the big picture for a second. When we tune into the Jets in Denver on Sunday afternoon, we know what the new Jets will look like. A fierce defense front with tight corner coverage and roving hard-hitting safeties. Linebackers that'll play fast and hit painfully hard. An offensive line that'll hold up against the pass and be nasty against the run. And our receivers and tight ends will be ready to catch, screen, and block because all that's required. And we can expect Breece and Michael Carter 1 to be the stars of the game again, all because of the effort of every player on the team. Special teams, offense, and defense. We won't be outworked. The smoke is clearing. Things are evident. We know what the Jets are going to do on Sunday, and I love the plan. We have an unrelenting, aggressive, and fun team led by youth and bolstered by veterans with solid creative coaching that knows how to kick butt for the whole game. But the Broncos also know what the Jets are going to do this Sunday. The secret is out. Go Jets. End scene. Boom. Whoa. What a father time by my dad. One of his best. I always tell him when I get it from him. I always say, this is one of your best ones. Yeah, but this one has so much. There's so much optimism, and he makes so many good points in this one. Like, again, you could call out every single player and who was great and give awards to everybody, but he's focusing on two things, the offensive line and defensive line. Defensive line, to see that Jeff Ulbrich is making those changes and getting these players onto the field. The guys like Quinnen are playing like an absolute maniac. Stunt monster, JFM, like he said. All these things were huge reasons why the Jets were able to beat the Packers this week. Talk about the offensive line. Elijah Vera Tucker, his personal hero. Love to hear that. Playing right tackle. Nate Herbig getting a shout-out, who he does not get anywhere near enough credit. This podcast talks about him, but most won't mention the right guard, Nate Herbig, that at this point is like one of the best players in the offensive line, one of the best players in the team, it feels like, because he's not making any mistakes. He's making things happen. And, man, it just like could have been such an issue there when you have a right guard go down or you're sliding a guy from the offensive line. Just so much incontinuity. But here we are with Nate Herbig, Laken Tomlinson, Dwayne Brown playing at the age. He is 38. Elijah Vera Tucker. It's good. He's absolutely right. I love that he said, the tight ends, wide receivers, and everything. Like, they're going to find success, and so will Breece and Michael Carter, because this team's not going to be outworked. And those wide receivers block, and those tight ends were blocking incredibly well this week, and guys were running, and the Jets were playing hard in every single facet of the game. Some people take special teams for granted. It's a boring part of the game. Kickers, punters, whatever, all they can do is mess up. But the Jets find a way to make it an advantage every single year with Brant Boyer. They did it again this Sunday. They beat the Packers on special teams. It's a huge advantage for the team right now, like in every single aspect. I think Greg Zuerlein's not perfect. But when you look at like Braxton Berrios and the rush and the coverage units, it's awesome to see. And it's part of the reason the Jets are winning these games. My dad's right. The Jets aren't getting outworked. But he's also right in that other teams around the league are taking notice. They're seeing what the Jets are doing. And now that we know what we are and we have an identity, like a pretty deep, successful identity for the first time in a while, it means a lot of other teams are going to look at it and say, all right, how are we going to mess that up? How are we going to break their identity, make them do something new? They know what to expect. They're going to be looking for Breece Hall all game. Michael Carter passes. They're going to be looking for little tight end dump-offs, but, primarily a rushing attack with some Braxton Berrios trick plays. They're going to expect coverage from Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. It's going to be interesting to see how the Jets make those adjustments mid-season as they have a lot of other people going up against them trying to change. So, awesome Father Time, Dad. Really appreciate it. That is all we got for the first half of this podcast. Third, time for a commercial break. Alrighty, and welcome back to This is the Jet Life. It is time for an AFC East check-in, which is one of the most relevant and important sections of this podcast for the first time ever, because the Jets are in second place right now, and they were almost in first place had the Bills lost. Bills 5-1, just beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead 24-20. A great comeback win. That's the best team in football right now. Until we play them and show them otherwise, they're going to continue to be the cream of the crop. They have a bye this week, so they're not going to be playing, but 5-1, they won't have less losses than the Jets after this bye, regardless of what happens in the Jets game. The Jets are in second place, 4-2. They just beat the Packers 27-10, and they're on a 3-game winning streak right now. Very cool. The Jets are one of 4 teams in the entire AFC that have a 4-2 record or better. So only 4 teams with at least 4 wins. You talk about undefeated teams. There's only 3 in the entire NFL. The Jets are one of them. Zach Wilson himself is undefeated. So many things about this team right now. It's looking really good. The only thing is they're in second place because of those freaking Bills. The next game is going to be in Denver, 4:05 against the Broncos, who are 2-4 at this point in time.
And played in overtime last night.
That's true. Short week, extended by like an extra 30 minutes and another quarter by having to do that. That's a good point, Kate. I thought about the short week, but I didn't really think about the fact that like maybe they took 3 extra hits that game. Okay, I like it. And you talk about the Dolphins. They are in third place, technically via tiebreaker. They're 3-3 right now. They lost this week to the Vikings. They're on a 3-game skid. They lose to the Vikings 24-16 in Minnesota. Vikings are now 5-1, so we play them later this year. Decent team. Skylar Thompson started the game for the Dolphins. Teddy Bridgewater ended up coming in. Didn't matter who was in. They weren't finding success. Their next game is going to be on Sunday Night Football for all to see. Home for the 2-4 Steelers. But the Steelers potentially will be playing with Mitch Trubisky if Kenny Pickett is out for any sort of concussion. I think he's in protocol right now. And Mitch Trubisky came back and helped win a game-winning drive against the Bucs and won that game for him. So maybe Pickett is flashier in the future, but maybe Mitch Trubisky gives the team a better chance to win. And I don't know what's going on with the quarterback situation in Miami, but it's not perfect right now, and everything isn't going perfectly smoothly. There's a lot of question marks around that team, so maybe on a big stage, Sunday Night Football, the Steelers can find a way to win. That would be huge. Then you got the 3-3 Patriots. Bailey Zappi beat the Cleveland Browns 38-15. Browns are now 2-4. They're seeming out of it. The Patriots are working back into it. They're still the basement dwellers of the AFC East via tiebreaker against the Dolphins, but they're both 3-3, 1 game behind the Jets. Patriots are on a 2-game winning streak with Bailey Zappi. They're going to have an interesting kind of quarterback controversy when Mac Jones is healthy and ready to play, if they want to roll with the guy who's won 2 straight, or if they want to go back to their guy, Mac Jones, who was drafted in the first round of last year. Very big decisions going on in New England. I'm sure Bill Belichick is happy to make these decisions because he's choosing between his guy and a guy that hasn't lost yet. But we'll see what happens. Their next game is going to be Monday Night Football at home against the 2-4 Bears. And Patriots, I think early in the year we thought were like, the bottom dwellers and they weren't doing so hot. But now, I don't know, Katie. We're seeing 2 3-3 teams, 1 game behind the Jets, Dolphins and Patriots, right at our heels, trying to take that spot from us. Who are you more worried about right now?
Unfortunately, the Pats. I mean, after watching that Lions game, the absolute shutout, and they're playing the Bears, it's not looking great.
I know. I hate to say it, too. Like, that's a really dangerous team. I was hoping early on, I was, like, getting really excited. All right, they're not doing so hot. I think they were 1-3, and it was feeling like, all right, maybe the Patriots are done. But then they bring in this third-string quarterback. He wins some games. They're right behind us. That's like, yeah, we play them after the Broncos, and Bill Belichick always schemes up the Jets really well when they have a young quarterback. If we can beat them, that's going to be such a huge moment for the Jets and this entire fan base if they beat the Patriots and just more separation between them. But if they lose, like, we're so close to losing that spot to the Patriots and looking right back up at them being like, damn, this close.
Yeah, I said earlier I was plotting on going to one of those games. I noticed the first at MetLife, those used to be more expensive than Foxborough. Now Foxborough is way more because I think they're already scheming that second Pats game is going to be huge. So.
Oh, my God. I like to think that maybe it's because so many Jets fans are buying the tickets, so they're just boosting the price.
That is true, but I was ready to go to that Foxborough game because it was a lot cheaper, and now it's so much more.
I was invited to go to the Patriots game. We have a box from my company, and I was invited to go to the Jets Patriots game, and I said, no way in hell am I going into Foxborough to watch the Jets with a bunch of Patriots fans. It's just, that's not going to be my Sunday. It's not, like, even if I just don't want to be in there. That's not a place for me. That's not where I should be enjoying the game. I need to be on the couch with my dad, eating steamers and whatever other New England food we have for the week.
Yeah. We'll see if I get there.
May end up finding the game. So that's what we have for the AFC East check-in. Jets in second place at 4-2, feeling really good about that. Now it's time to start talking about this Jets versus Packers performance, where the Jets and Packers started this game really even. It was 3-3 early, went to 6-6, 6-6 before the half, and the refereeing was horrible. It felt like they wanted to do anything they could to make the Jets lose this game. Hated seeing that. Zach Wilson wasn't doing awesome. The scoring wasn't really happening, but the defense was hitting hard, making Aaron Rodgers' life miserable. We're watching that thumb in that hand, giving him a lot of trouble, having trouble gripping the ball, not making great throws. We're like, did we get lucky again with a quarterback who's not 100% ready to play against the Jets? And the second half happens, and Aaron Rodgers looked much better in the second half, definitely started finding his rhythm. But that's the same point the Jets absolutely came alive. That's the offensive line, Breece Hall, a big Zach Wilson hero throw to Corey Davis, special teams units going berserk. The Jets came out in this one. They won the thing 27-10, took over the game. They left no doubt at all. You can look at Zach Wilson's performance and say, well, Zach Wilson didn't play great. Sure, but you can't look at the Jets' performance and say they didn't play great. They did. They blew out the Packers in Lambo, celebrated, and it was awesome.
Lambo Leap.
Lambo Leap was awesome. There was a big group of it was like 10 Jets fans right up there in expensive seats waiting for him, pulling him up. That was awesome to see, right?
Goals.
Yeah. Right. We could be that one day. We get a group of people. We get roommate Kyle, get the wife, build a little bit of a pit and let them, we'll see. They play probably 8 years from now before they play in Lambeau again, but that's okay. Bring the kids too. So we start with Zach Wilson, 10 for 18, 110 yards. Most important thing was he had no turnovers. Not a great game. The good thing about it is he's eluding sacks. They're blitz heavy with the Packers, and they're trying a lot of different things to get through this offensive line. The Jets' O-line does pretty well, but they only get to Zach Wilson 2 times. And through 3 starts for Zach Wilson, where he is undefeated, one of only 3 quarterbacks, and one of only 2. There are 3 I know are better. He's only been sacked 5 times in 3 games, and that's a huge testament, one, to the offensive line that is so much improved as Elijah Vera Tucker plays whatever role is most important. Nate Herbig plays right guard, but also to Zach Wilson's ability to elude pressure, move out of the pocket, and throw away. Sometimes it's ugly. He hasn't really been eluding those pressures and then making good throws downfield, which he did some of last year, but he also threw a lot more interceptions when he was trying to elude those pressures and went towards the out-of-bounds markers. This year, this week, he actually almost threw a couple of them, but he's doing well. He's eluding the pressure, and that's huge for this team, not taking those big negative yardage plays, because when you're at 2nd and 10 instead of, 2nd and 16, it actually allows you to continue running the ball with a guy like Breece Hall or Michael Carter, where we're having most of our output. So those are super important plays that are helping Zach Wilson lead this team to victories. So he had some questionable throws I mentioned that were like behind receivers, Garrett Wilson going to the sideline. I wish he wasn't so intent on throwing the ball to Garrett Wilson this week, because Jair Alexander, the absolute best corner for the Packers, was lined up on him a lot, and still he found a reason to just throw it in there and never really on time. And it was this close to getting picked by Jair probably 2 times. But at the end of the day, Zach Wilson had no turnovers, and he had that one hero throw. He made one great throw in this entire game, and it was rolling out, finding Corey Davis a la Tennessee of last year, and he found him for 41 yards on a huge play. The next play, Braxton Berrios scampers to the end zone for a touchdown. The offense came alive right there in that moment, and that just reminded you of what Zach Wilson can do when he's playing well, because he can make those roll-out 40-yard throws downfield and hit a guy right there. And that's what you want to see. You want to see more of it. You just don't want to see him forcing it. So as long as he's playing a game manager-style quarterback and taking advantage of those opportunities, we're at least not going to be complaining too much. We're just not going to be completely sold yet. And I think that's fair. When we look at the running backs, what a performance. 157 rushing yards, 6 yards per carry for this running unit. Oh my gosh, Breece Hall is a beast. He is our offensive player of the game. Who else could it be? This guy, 20 carries, 116 yards, and a touchdown. That one trap play where he scampered for 35, you could see an image. It's actually the cover photo of my Twitter page, @Jets_Dan right now. It's Breece Hall, and it's 7 Packers defenders, no Jets on the field, just all surrounding him because he was schemed up to be wide open for that. And it's this perfect marriage right now, this complement of Mike LaFleur and Breece Hall's ability. It's just working to perfection. Offensive player of the game, again. He's already won it 2 times. This is going to be his 3rd time in 6 games. and the guy's a rookie, and the offense has been more exciting than it's been in a long time. This guy, huge reason why I love Breece Hall. You got Michael Carter, who, compared to the 22 touches, 20 rushes, and 2 catches for Breece Hall, you got only 7 touches for Michael Carter, but he had 6 carries for 41 yards and a 6.8 yard per carry average, a big 25-yarder at a huge crucial point late in the game. Michael Carter continues to get upfield instead of getting tackled in the backfield. So many times you see a play break down, you think, and it's like Michael Carter's going to lose 1 yard, and he ends up picking up 1 yard, and it doesn't seem like a ton, and it doesn't show up on the stat sheet, but that 2-yard difference right there that puts the Jets in, a 2nd and 9 instead of a 2nd and 11 is actually huge for the team and the playbook and what LaFleur can run and dial up. So feeling really, really good about that two-headed monster. They're running 21 personnel, 2 running backs, 1 tight end, 2 wide receivers, a decent amount this year with both Breece Hall and Michael Carter, and I think that stuff's really interesting. It was the trap play, actually, where Breece Hall's lined up as like an H-back role, kind of a slot receiver. Michael Carter behind the quarterback. Breece Hall goes. Everybody's watching Michael Carter through the back. C.J. Uzomah with a seal block, and Breece Hall takes off on the trap play. Nobody saw it coming. Those are the types of things that we can do now. And it's just the 2 guys. Training camps, we were looking at Bam Knight, Tevin Coleman. We were looking at Ty Johnson, LaMichael Pirine. Ty Johnson gets the ball a little bit on special teams. He's played a couple snaps here and there, but it's Michael Carter, it's Breece Hall. It's a 1-2 punch leaning Breece Hall, and that's okay. They're going to be able to use both guys all throughout the season as long as they stay healthy, and they are freaking fun to watch. I love that unit. 157 rushing yards. 6.8 yards per carry. What a freaking game. Or 6 yards per carry, but what a game. Wide receivers, not as flashy. Some really good blocks in there. Some really good under-the-radar stuff they did. But total for the wide receivers in this game, 4 catches, 66 yards. Led by Corey Davis. He made that one big 41-yard catch. Ended the game with a little bit over 50 yards. Garrett Wilson targeted a lot, 5 times, I think. Only caught 1 ball. Elijah Moore, we talked about him. He was a little upset that he got no targets. Technically, he did get thrown the ball once, and a horrible throw, and a penalty was on the play, so they didn't call it. But Braxton Berrios, he only had 1 catch, but Braxton had the big 20-yard run. So that touchdown was there. Braxton is finding a way to play minimal snaps, 30%, 35, 25% of snaps, but still make his presence felt. And he's one of those guys that, like, you scheme up for an end around, or you scheme up for a bubble screen or a sneaky play or a pass from him or something. A little bit of everything, so it's not one-dimensional. But, like, he's on the field enough and can play receiver and is really good at playing the slot and running routes and catching the ball that it's not like everybody knows what's coming. It's not like Brad Smith is coming out of the field or one of these guys, Broncos, for example, next week. It's not like Kendall Hinton or, Montrell Washington's coming out of the field and it's clearly going to be some sort of end around. Otherwise, the guy's relatively useless. Braxton Berrios has ability to do so many different things that it actually makes teams nervous. And you can see when they do motions and stuff with him, defenses are like, okay, watch this guy right here because he sneaks by you, he gets the angles, he picks up yards, and he's an unsung hero that doesn't have a ton of stats. He's not going to be on your fantasy team. He's not going to be a Pro Bowl wide receiver. Probably should be a Pro Bowl and All-Pro special team or returner. But in the receiving game and running game, all that stuff, he's a very, very versatile weapon. Can't be happier to have him on the team. Jeff Smith, not involved. Denzel Mims, inactive again. Tight ends, great game blocking. Great game blocking. One really nice play to C.J. Uzomah. Nice to see him have his probably best play of the entire season. 14-yard catch. Uzomah had some awesome blocks. But between the 2 guys, Conklin and Uzomah, they only had 3 catches for 33 yards. So quiet game there, but blocking well. Behind them, Lawrence Cager's been cut. The Jets moved Kenny Yeboah to the active roster and put Jeremy Rucker onto the inactives list for this game. Kenny Yeboah played some snaps. No real presence felt. Looking at the offensive line, got to feel good about 33 total rushes, 179 yards, 5.4 yards per carry, and only 2 sacks allowed. They also only gave up 2 quarterback hits. The only 2 quarterback hits were on those sacks. So Zach Wilson was relatively clean in the pocket. We were picking up chunk yardage, and it was feeling really good. Dwayne Brown looking like a boy running downfield, making huge downfield blocks in this game. Awesome to see that. Tomlinson and McGovern played very nicely in the middle. Herbig, unsung hero, we've talked about him. He drew a penalty, just totally messing with the guy he's blocking all game, beating this guy up probably, and we see him take a swipe at Herbig's helmet, knock it off. 15-yard penalty for the Jets on a personal foul, and yeah, that's the type of stuff that you do when you dominate the guy in front of you for 60 minutes. They're going to eventually lash out at you. And Herbig did nothing wrong. He's just dominating you. ABT, he's still just a stud holding down any position we need. It wasn't necessarily his best game at tackle yet, but he played well. You look at those rushing stats, you look at the hits, the quarterback hits, the sacks. It was a great team unit, and this isn't even his normal position. He's just playing there because we need him to, and he's doing it awesome still. So that is what we have on the offensive side of the ball. And now before we go over to the defensive side of the ball, we do have to take a quick pit stop at the cooler for a little What's on Tap. That is right, folks. This is What's on Tap. And today, I'm drinking another special beer. I said I was going to have something special, do a treat. The real treat in this podcast, I think, is doing the video version with Katie and having Paycheck involved for it. But also, that's the real treat. That's the real win. But also here having Bissell Brothers 2 weeks in a row. Thank you to the wife. This is Substance Ale. And I thought it was fitting because this Jets team is more than just flesh. They got substance. And so I saw this and I was like, this is perfect. It's made by Bissell Brothers, my favorite brewery. And I've had this before. Maybe did it on the podcast, not sure. But I did not know what the alcohol percentage was until now. And I'm looking at it. It's a 1 pint, 6-ounce can. 16-ounce can. But it's 6.6% alcohol by volume. And honestly, as I was drinking it, I thought I was drinking something that was like 5.5. And when you find out that it's 1% more than you originally believed, that means it's a good beer. It means it's a dangerous beer, and you got to be careful drinking it because these things can get you. But it means that you are enjoying the flavor of alcohol with just such beautiful, subtle ale notes and
Substance.
It is. It's really good. This is an awesome ale. 6.6 is right in my wheelhouse. It's not super like hazy and hoppy. I'm sure if I poured it, it would be relatively clear, but it's smooth. Almost no bitterness, no lasting finish. Very clean mouthfeel, a hipster would say. But yeah, that's what I got from the wife, Shannon. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. That is this week's What's on Tap. And now before we go to the defensive side of the ball, we do have to take a quick commercial break. Alrighty, and welcome back to This is the Jet Life. We just talked about how the Jets scored 27 points in this game. We're now going to talk about what the heck the Jets did on defense to hold the Packers and Aaron Rodgers to 10 points. Ooh, baby. This Jets defensive line is where we're going to start. They held the Packers to 60 rushing yards on 20 carries. That's 3.0 yards per carry. The Jets sacked Aaron Rodgers 4 times, had 9 quarterback hits. Defensive line was all over the place. And honestly, going into the season, rush defense was a big concern, specifically losing Foley Fatukasi, putting Sheldon Rankins back in there, a couple moving parts on the defensive tackle front, and we weren't feeling great. But when you look at it and what they did and how we came into this game saying Aaron Jones is averaging 6.8 yards per carry, we got A.J. Dillon averaging 3.9. Jets play them. They get 20 carries, so they got a decent workload, 20 carries. It's not like they weren't being featured, but the way they were able to stop that, I mean, C.J. Mosley gets a lot of credit. A lot of the other defensive players, linebackers as well, making big plays. But the defensive front starting it all off and then getting 9 quarterback hits. We're going to start with our defensive player of the game. I think we already know who it is. One, Quinnen Williams, the absolute beast himself. We talked about him already in positives. All those stats are still true. Still first in the league for interior defensive linemen in sacks. Still 11th overall in sacks. 5 straight games with at least a half a sack. He had an extra blocked field goal in this game. He had a strip sack, another sack, 3 quarterback hits, 5 tackles. He was all over the place. He was absolutely an absolute joy to watch. This guy's having fun, playing at such a high level, a homegrown drafted guy that didn't get a ton of credit early on. And I think through this broadcast, which, by the way, I just want to say Kevin Burkhardt and Greg Olson did an awesome job calling this game. They were clearly an A team. We don't get 8 teams very often. But the Fox A team, it's been like 20 years since we had one. They called a great game. I love hearing those two together. And I think they gave Quinnen Williams maybe 3 or 4 separate highlight sections where they just talk about the year that he's having and how he's an all-pro player or defensive player of the year candidate. And it was just absolutely awesome to watch. To see Quinnen go like that and make them talk about it over and over was also awesome. You also got John Franklin Myers. He had a big sack. My dad called him the stunt hero because when you talk about those 9 quarterback hits and the 4 sacks he just had, a lot of it was created by stunts, which is when you line up against one offensive lineman as a defensive lineman, and you fake like you're going up there, and then you pull back and around another defensive lineman and go through a different hole. So essentially, you look like you're going through, say, the 2-hole on the offensive line, but then you back up and you go through the 3-hole on the opposite side. That would be a stunt. And the Jets were doing that sort of twist and pull and stunt all game on that defensive front, and it was confusing the heck out of the Packers' offensive line. And that's a lot of the reason the Jets were able to get pressure from John Franklin Myers in the middle, playing defensive tackle, which is a position he's very good at. Quinnen Williams is getting pressures. We had pressures from, Carl Lawson was quiet overall, but he was a big part of setting up those stunts and those pressures. Sheldon Rankin staying hot. He had another sack. We had Vinny Curry back. Great to see him making plays because he's like a team leader and a veteran, and the guys love him. He had a sick tackle for loss. He was playing well, made a couple other nice run stops, chasing guys down. Jacob Martin, he had a quarterback hit. Bryce Huff, minimal snaps, 2 quarterback hits. That guy always seems to find a way to get quarterback hits when he plays. He never gets like the sack or the fumble, but he always has pressures and quarterback hits, playing like 16 snaps a game, if that. A lot of good production from Huff. That's why he's been on the team for as long as he has. But those stunts, that defensive play calling and stuff by Jeff Ulbrich worked to perfection, and Aaron Rodgers was having a tough time.
Yeah, my favorite line from the news cycle this week is, Aaron Rodgers caught a case of the Quinnen Williams or something like that.
Yeah.
You don't want to catch that. You don't want to catch COVID. You don't want to catch a case of the Quinnen Williams. So.
I think that was Boomer on Sunday Night Football as like the fastest 3 minutes in sports or whatever. Yeah, caught a case of the Quinnen Williams. And like, again, another shout out for the guy so everybody just knows he's here and he's for real. And there's also one you should check out if you haven't seen it, where Aaron Rodgers is on the Pat McAfee show with he gets a segment basically every single week because, I don't know, AJ Hawk's part of the program. I don't know what the Packers deal is, but Aaron Rodgers is part of the show. And they asked him today, what happened with the Jets? That was crazy. And he was just like, they have so many good players. And then he basically listed every single player on the Jets, how they got him and how good he is. He was like, well, they got Quan Alexander and Quinnen Williams and Jordan Whitehead and DJ Reed and the new young cornerback. It was just
some respect. We like respect. I liked their exchange at the end too. Zach Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, little hug at the end.
Yeah, I think that was a cool moment for Zach Wilson for sure because he says it's his idol. But also there's this wasn't a disrespectful game in any front. I mean, the most disrespectful thing that happened was Sauce putting on the cheesehead, to be honest. That was the only and the Lambo leap maybe. So it was us that were being kind of the jerks, which is we're the new kids on the block. And we're getting a little bit excited about this team right now, but overall, it was a pretty good, cordial game between two good professional units, and I think it all comes down to those two coaching staffs, because you've got Robert Saleh, who leads a good group of guys, and then you got his best friend, Matt LaFleur, the coach of the other team, and then the offensive coordinator's brother, Mike LaFleur, so it's I thought the Jets could have scored at the end of the game, an extra touchdown for sure, but they chose not to, maybe. I mean, they weren't throwing the ball. They were just running up the middle, not getting it. They had felt 7 chances to punch it in from the 2-yard line. And if it was Bill Belichick, I think you score that. I think you throw the ball once on a fake and you get a touchdown. Yeah. That's our defensive line. Got to feel great about that. You talk linebackers. Quincy Williams was back better than ever. This guy's flying to the ball, hitting hard. What an infectious personality. What a cool dude, crushing people. I mean, nothing feels better, I don't think, on this entire team. Braxton Berrios sneak plays are really fun. I think that Quincy Williams hit sticks are one of the other best things that can happen on this team. Maybe Sauce Gardner pass deflections, but it's just awesome to see Quincy Williams playing like this with his hair on fire. CJ, second on the team in tackles with 10. He's still the leader, playing awesome. He makes nice tackles, and he's kind of an unsung hero. Nobody gives him any credit, but there was a play. It was the blocked field goal where Quinnen blocked it. And the first thing that CJ Mosley does is he turns around and looks at everybody and says, don't touch it, don't touch it. Because the Jets pick the ball up and start to return it, they get the ball where the return ends, which they weren't probably going to get back to where it was kicked. If they don't touch the ball, they get the ball from where it was kicked. And so he knows right away, veteran mindset, and the first thing he does is don't get it, don't get it. The next guy to chip in on doing that motion was Justin Hardy, who's the special teams captain, so clearly he knows it as well. You see Robert Saleh doing it on the sideline saying, don't touch it, don't touch it. But the fact that CJ Mosley knows those things like the back of his hand, and he doesn't have to think about it, he just right away, guys, that's why we don't make mental mistakes. And you see other teams that are having blunders and making the wrong decision, and what's going on, why would they do that? He literally limits those things from happening. And if it wasn't for him, guys like Ashton Davis probably would have picked that ball up and tried to run it. No offense to anybody specifically. Probably shouldn't have called him out. But C.J. Mosley is the reason that these things don't happen. And that doesn't show up on a stat sheet. And it doesn't have any credit given to it because we'll never know what would have happened without him. But just trust me, it would have. Like, this guy's awesome. Quan Alexander, he made big plays late in the game. Didn't play a lot early, a lot more Quincy. But when Quan came in, he made a nice tackle. And he had a nice pass deflection basically to win the game at the end. So good to see that from him. Then you talk cornerbacks. And the cornerbacks played really, really well in this game, as they have all season long. We've had no issues with our cornerback play whatsoever since the season began. And in this game, 10 total catches for 119 yards for Packers wide receivers, led by Sauce Gardner, who had 2 more pass deflections, currently has some sort of streak for most pass deflections coming into a season, and he dominated his matchups, every one of them.
Did you ever see that replay of that pick 6 that they took back? I couldn't find it.
Yeah, so it was really close, and when it happened, me and my dad knew it wasn't a pick 6, and we were celebrating like crazy, but then upon review, it tipped like his hand was here, and the ball happened to just touch barely on the grass.
Yeah, I was looking for the replay, but
yeah.
I was listening on the radio.
They didn't put it on the national NFL network when they do their recaps or whatever, 12 minutes. They just kept that part out. That was one of the first plays of the game too. Yeah. And we were losing our freaking minds because it looked in every way, shape, and form from it like, oh my gosh, this is one that went off his hand, because his hand was there, but it did touch some blades of grass, moved a couple giblets on the field, but still you see it. He was ready for that ball, and had that been an inch back on the receiver's hand, that's a pick 6 for Sauce Gardner. Plays that don't show up, but he's ready to make them. So he's been awesome. He left the game briefly, looked like maybe a head injury, but I think he's okay. Seeing him celebrate after the game. We'll see as the injury designations and things come out. If he's in any sort of concussion protocol, hopefully not. DJ Reed quietly just crushing receivers on the other side. He's a much better tackler than Sauce Gardner. Not quite as fast. Doesn't have those long arms. Only 5'9". But DJ Reed is having an equally good season as Sauce Gardner. He's just not that big name. He doesn't do it with as much flash, but he's having more like that just silent season, just covering people. You had Michael Carter. He's playing a lot of nickel cornerback. He's playing well. Because he plays nickel cornerback, he's asked to tackle a lot. He's coming in basically for a linebacker, and he's put in a position in the middle of the field where if they run the ball or do some sort of screen, bubble screen, whatever, he's right in the middle of the fray, and he's doing a pretty good job of it. It's a very difficult position. The guys give him a lot of credit because you do have to do a lot of tackles and be physical at being a small guy and play against those slender wide receivers, those Braxton Berrios-sized guys, but then be able to tackle the Breece Hall. It's tough to do. But he had 5 tackles. He's playing really well this year. Then we had Brandon Echols play a few times. The only touchdown that was thrown was to Allen Lazard from Aaron Rodgers on a beautiful pass thrown against Brandon Echols. So you don't want to give up any touchdown passes, but if it's going to be anybody, I'd like it to be the 4th string cornerback. It's not Sauce Gardner. It's not DJ Reed. It's not Michael Carter getting burned. And had Michael Carter not come out on that play and been in that position instead of Brandon Echols, it's possible they wouldn't have had any touchdowns. Maybe it would have been a bigger blowout than it already was. But Echols is playing decently well on special teams, and I like to see him get on the field from time to time just to keep him ready, because at some point it's possible somebody gets injured and he's got to play some snaps, whether it's outside or inside, because he's kind of the backup for both right now, as Breece Hall is just listed as inactive basically every game. Justin Hardy, you don't want him touching the cornerback side of the ball. So Brandon Echols, to see him get on the field, it's good, but, obviously he was the guy that gave up the touchdown. Then looking at the safeties, I'm so much higher on LaMarcus Joyner right now than I was, because the guy's got a nose for the football. He had a fumble recovery on a weird exchange from Aaron Rodgers to A.J. Dillon where it hit him in the chest pad. I played quarterback briefly when I was a kid, and the first thing that you're taught when you're handing the ball to a running back is never hit him in the chest plate, because it protrudes from your body and actually sticks out with pieces of plastic. So if you hit that first, it's going to cause the ball to take either a weird angle or bounce weirdly. You want to get him right in the abdomen where there is no protection on a player. I mean, you can see it on Ezekiel Elliott when he picks his shirt up. There's nothing there. You want to hit him right there so it's just his body kind of absorbs into it and they get the ball. Still, it's like an NFL play. You should be able to get a handoff anywhere. The guys have done it millions of times, but there was a little bit of a miscommunication there, and the Jets' LaMarcus Joyner jumped on it instantly. That was awesome to see. The guy's not making mistakes anymore, but he's making pass deflections, interceptions, fumble recoveries, tackles, and that whole like back half of the defense miscommunication falling apart is completely gone ever since they had that safety meeting where DJ Reed left and said, like, we had issues, but we talked about it, and now we think we understand what's going on. And so all of a sudden it's not happening anymore. And maybe he was telling the truth, and these guys are doing really well. You also got Jordan Whitehead, who's tackling much better in the last 3 games. He's getting some punishing hits in there, and he's consistently like our 3rd most tackles on the team. Usually got like Quincy or Quan and CJ Mosley as the top 2, and then Jordan Whitehead cleans up a lot if it doesn't go to those guys. So good play from him. Happy to see what we're getting from Jordan Whitehead. It's been good. Good safety play, good cornerback play, good linebacker play. Defensive line is coming alive. That's why you give up 10 points to Aaron Rodgers and the Packers in Lambeau. Jeff Ulbrich, the unit, Robert Saleh. Hats off to the boys. They are keeping the season alive, albeit some quiet Zach Wilson performances. But this team is getting it done. 4-2, 3-game winning streak. Let's go. Look at the special team side of the ball. This area cannot be focused on enough because the Jets absolutely had an advantage in the special teams in this game, and they played out of their minds. Brandon Mann's special teams game was solid. He punted pretty well. Greg Zuerlein missed a long kick. He did hit 2 other ones. He did go 3 for 3 on extra points. But where the real difference was made was in the return game, where Braxton Berrios had a very nice return game. He had a 29-yard kickoff return. He had a 19-yard punt return. It was like an 11.3 yard per punt return average for Braxton Berrios, so very efficient there. But then you had a Quinnen Williams block on a field goal, where Michael Clemens also got a hand on it as well. And then you had the huge Michael Clemens blocked punt flying up the middle, almost like another stunt where the scheme just got Michael Clemens loose. And he's not the type of guy that you would typically see on a punt block because usually it's a faster guy, maybe a linebacker or something, not a big, stocky defensive lineman. But Michael Clemens is a scary man and gets after people fast. And he is our special teams player of the game because Quinnen Williams had a blocked kick, but it just limited them from getting 3 points. Michael Clemens' block was so clean, so crisp, but it literally translated to 7 points for the Jets. As Will Parks picked the ball up, Justin Hardy was right there to bring him into the end zone. Greg Zuerlein kicks the extra point, and that one block, because of Michael Clemens, Jets got 7 points. They needed it in this game. The offense wasn't doing a ton. They weren't scoring a ton, and if they had kept this game, closer, it would have been scarier with Aaron Rodgers and the ball in his hands on the field. But because the Jets were making plays like this, and Michael Clemens and the special teams, it was a clear, somewhat easy second-half victory. One of my favorite parts of this play, as Will Parks scored the touchdown, was that Justin Hardy was right there as well. And instead of Justin Hardy wanting to pick the ball up and have some sort of big moment where he can get it and get a touchdown, like, that would be great. Instead of doing that, he's right next to Will Parks. He doesn't fight for the ball. He says, Will, you take it. And then he actually helps him get his balance and then brings him into the end zone with him. That's leadership stuff. It's not me play, it's we play. And it's awesome to see from our captain. What a great play. Yeah, special teams was dynamite. Love to see it. That is a value add for the Jets. It's going to be a value add next year or next week and weeks to come. Next year, too, as long as we have Brant Boyer, because this is Brant Boyer's, third coaching regime with the Jets, and it always works out well because the guy knows how to coach, and he gets the most out of his players. He went from Andre Roberts to Braxton Berrios. Life is good for the special teams and the New York Jets. I have to take a quick second because I think there's something on my mustache. It's like brushing from my mustache to my nose. I don't know what it is, and I keep touching my nose like it's like a weird booger and someone's going to see it. Can you see something on me? No. Okay. All good. Who is the quarterback again this week? You said his name. Russell Wilson? No. Who might play for Brett Rippon? Okay. If Russell doesn't play. I am going to mention Rippon. And so now, the last order of business, a Broncos preview. To see if the Jets can extend their winning streak to 4 games, if they can go to 4-0 on the road, and if they can be 5-2 on the season, which is absolutely like you're looking at the playoffs type of record. So the Jets are in Denver, in Mile High Stadium, games at 4:05 on CBS. The call is going to be Ian Eagle and Charles Davis, so we're seeing a much better crew than we've been getting. It's no Trent Green, no Chris Spielman. Life is good. We got good announcers again because the Jets are a good watch, and you're not getting that trash. The Broncos opened as 3-point favorites. I think given some upcoming or some recent news, I think it's dropped down to like 1 point, but they opened as 3-point favorites. No respect for the Jets, even though the Broncos are 2-4, coming off a loss in overtime to the Chargers. So far, the Broncos, they got 2 wins. They beat the Texans. They beat the 49ers. They got 4 losses. They've lost to the Seahawks, the Raiders, the Colts, and the Chargers. So when you see that, it's like, all right, they're clearly having their struggles. But it's never easy when you play in Mile High Stadium. It's easy to kick because the ball goes further, but the altitude changes, especially for young guys in Colorado, can be kind of weird. Some guys react weirdly to it, have trouble catching their breath, maybe aren't playing at like 100%. They're at like 98, 97%. In the NFL, that can make a big difference. So hopefully the altitude's not a big issue for our young guys. Another note about the Broncos is they are the most injured team in the NFL. They have the most money on IR right now, and that's something that the Jets said, it was like 2-3 years ago, we were the most injured team in the league. We know what it's like. We've been there, and it sucks. They just had another injury today. Their 5th torn ACL of the season for this team. Yeah, 5 torn ACLs just alone. Like, complete season-ending injury. Did you? Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a lot. And it was this time, it was special teamer Aaron Patrick, but still, it's potentially another guy they don't have there. It joins the list of injured players, including Garrett Bowles, Ronald Darby, Tim Patrick, Randy Gregory, Javonte Williams. These are good names. And then there's a handful of other backups like Tom Compton and some other guys. Like, that's just so much talent that's not on the field for them. And there's a lot of other issues going on there. And there were issues when a lot of those guys were playing, so let's not act like it's all there. But it definitely makes them a little bit less scary in terms of talent on the field than it would have been. When you look at the Broncos coaching overall, there is no reason to be impressed with Nathaniel Hackett or his start in 6 games as a Broncos head coach. They've had time management issues. They've done some weird play calling. They don't seem to be in sync between him and Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson doesn't seem confident. There's a lot of messes going on there. Nathaniel Hackett is struggling early. He came from the Packers unit, and we'll see if he gets it together. It's obviously the first year. There's definitely some learning curves and everything, and he's going to get it together, but hopefully we can get them while they're still working through some stuff. Offensive coordinator, Justin Uten. Their defensive coordinator is Ejiro Evero, and then on their defensive staff, they've got Dom Capers. So when you look at it, it's like other than Dom Capers, who's like a defensive assistant, it's a very inexperienced overall staff, not a lot of household names, not a lot of guys who are, necessarily here to stay. They're just like, let's see if this thing works. And so far, it really hasn't. I'm not scared of this coaching staff. I think 10 out of 10, the Jets have a better coaching staff in every single aspect of the game. I think they've got a better head coach, defensive coordinator, special teams coordinator, offensive coordinator. I feel great about the Jets in that aspect. Would I have thought differently a couple weeks ago? Maybe. But seeing the Jets go up against Mike Tomlin, seeing the Jets go up against the Packers, feeling pretty good about this coaching staff and what they can do. Then you look at the Broncos offense, you start with Russell Wilson. There have been struggles early from Russell Wilson. He looks lost in the new offense, this West Coast style offense. Keep in mind, Russell Wilson was a guy that came in, was, just a kid, won the job in Seattle with Pete Carroll, and they brought him up to speed, and he started as a game-managing quarterback, and then he kind of developed some running ability, and then when the defense and the running game started slowing down, he started throwing deeper and this and that, but he was so comfortable there. And since he's moved to a new offense, a new city, and a new team, he's never really felt comfortable. And if the Jets can get him in this sort of stage, it's going to be a lot easier. You've also got news coming out today that he's getting an MRI on his hamstring right now and potentially would miss this Jets game. He's questionable. He's in a lot of pain. We don't know if he's going to make it. And if he doesn't, it's going to be Brett Rippon, who a lot of us know is the guy that beat us on Thursday Night Football in 2020. I think it was October 2nd, 2020. Brett Rippon beats the Jets. And you look at that game, it was 39, let's see if I got it, 37-28 they beat the Jets, right? But Brett Rippon was 19 for 31. Okay, not horrible. 242 yards. He had 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He was sacked a few times, 5 quarterback hits. Quarterback rating is 67. Actually, he was never sacked. He was hit 5 times, never technically sacked. Quarterback rating of 67.6. Not a great game from Brett Rippon, even though he was the guy that beat us. So no reason to be super scared of him, who hasn't even had a lot of starts since then. But that's their passing game. It's either going to be a uncomfortable Russell Wilson who's trying to get it together, or a Brett Rippon, who we've seen once before, beat us, but shouldn't be that scary. against this defensive unit that just put up an absolute great game against the Packers in Lambeau. We got to feel pretty good. And most of us have watched a lot of Broncos this year because they're primetime games, Sunday night, Monday night, Thursday night footballs that we're being forced to watch. That is not a good offense. Not right now. Then you talk about Javonte Williams being on IR, out for the season. You talk about his backup, Melvin Gordon, who's fumbled at least 4 times and is currently not getting any run for that team. He was benched for all last game. They're leading on journeyman backup Latavius Murray and Mike Boone. And they're decent players, but they do not have home run ability. Latavius Murray was getting the lion's share, 16 carries this last week. He's never going to break a 70-yard touchdown. Not on this Jets team with the speed that we have. So not super scary there in the running game. You look at the wide receivers, they got talent and diversity. Jerry Jeudy, route runner. Cortland Sutton, big target. You got speed in KJ Hamler, and then you got some shifty guys in Montrell Washington and Kendall Hinton. They don't have Tim Patrick. What they do have with that group of 5 is a lot of inconsistency. Those guys can do a lot. They can get open, but they drop balls. They have bad routes. They're not the best blockers all the time. And that's part of the reason that Russell Wilson's finding struggles with them. They're not on the same page. And if it continues that way with Wilson or Rippon, again, this should be an easier matchup for the Jets than, say, going up against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. It's probably potentially even easier than like Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, and George Pickens of the Steelers. This is like not an impossible ask. And it's Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed and Michael Carter. These are good players, Katie.
And something I just looked up, the Broncos have only scored 23 points max the whole regular season. So if we can hold them, I don't know if Ripper has more than 23 in him. That'd be interesting to see. But I'm hoping for a less than 23-point game for our defense. So,
man, when you think about that, like 23 points, that's a low number. I mean, the Jets just scored 27 pretty easily. They had 24 already this year. And the offense is not going for the Jets. They're winning through special teams, defense, and other things like that. I don't know. Yeah, it's not. When you look at the offensive side of the ball, you can't be scared. Tight end, Greg Dulcich is kind of like the new Noah Fant. Receives, doesn't block very well. Becoming a bigger part of this offense as Albert O has, for whatever reason, been phased out. He was the guy that looked like he'd be the more ready tight end when they traded Noah Fant. It's like, well, they got Albert O, and Noah Fant can't do everything. Albert O's a little bit more do-it-all, block, receive, true tight end position. And this year happens, and it's like right to another Noah Fant type in Greg Dulcich. And it's kind of working. Their third-string tight end is Eric Tomlinson. Remember him? Former Jet. Offensive line, Garrett Bowles is missing. He was their best offensive lineman. Calvin Anderson is stepping in there. You got a lot of youth between Lloyd Cushenberry and you got Quinn Miners, both drafted in the last couple of years. The other two rounding it out, Dalton Reisner and Cam Fleming at guard and tackle. And it's not a great unit, especially without Garrett Bowles. They are giving up pressures. We saw the Los Angeles Chargers get after them last night. So hopefully the Jets can do the same. Overall, looking at that Broncos offense, the running lanes, the explosiveness in the rushing game, it's lacking. Russell's taking more sacks than ever. He seems confused. He used to be heralded for his ability to escape pressures, roll out, throw the ball out of bounds, and just take a 0-yard play. Just a neutral play, like, listen, they had all this pressure, and still somehow we got back at 2nd and 10, 3rd and 10, whatever. But this year, he's going down, he's taking sacks, he's not moving like that. He doesn't look comfortable. And the receivers, they have ability, but they're inconsistent. Overall, we're not super scared of that offense. Then you look at the defense, and that defense is ridiculous. They have one of the best defenses in the NFL, for sure. They just played a good offense in the Los Angeles Chargers. They held Austin Eckler to 2.6 yards per carry. They held Justin Herbert to a 66 quarterback rating in the same game. They still lost. They shut down Matt Ryan, who just threw like 350 yards this last game against, I don't even remember who. Matt Ryan goes off for the Colts. When they played against the Broncos, it was one of the ugliest performances you've ever seen, and you think to yourself, like, I don't think Matt Ryan can play quarterback anymore. That's what the Broncos do to you. The Broncos are dynamic in all phases of their defense. On the defensive line, Draymond Jones and DJ Jones are both very good players in the middle. Draymond Jones currently questionable with a neck injury. If he doesn't play, it would be, I don't want to. It's not a good thing because we don't want him to be injured, and I like Draymond Jones, the player, for sure. But he is a big impact player for that defensive line. They don't have a ton of pass rush from that defensive line group. They get it from the edges, and they got speed. They don't have Randy Gregory right now, but they got Brandon Browning, and they've got Bradley Chubb, and those guys come off the edge, quick first step, so freaking fast. They can torment a quarterback. They really do get after you so quick. This is a blitz-heavy team just like the Packers was. I think it's nice to play 2 in a row because the Packers are top 5 in blitz percentage. I think the Broncos are right up there as well. And when you play 2 teams that have similar schemes and like we're going to go after you by sending extra guys, it's not a 4-man up front like the Jets run, try to get after you that way and keep everybody else in coverage. It's like we're going to throw different guys at you, come off the edge, try to rip through those tackles. We just played the Packers, who maybe aren't quite as good at doing it as the Broncos, but at least we've got a little bit of a consistency there in schematic standpoints. Josie Jewell, solid tackler. He's questionable right now. He's the middle linebacker. When you look at the cornerbacks, they have like arguably the best cornerback in the entire league who's not getting talked about like it. Pat Surtain. He's one of the cleanest covers I've seen in a long time. He's long, fast, stride for stride with you. He does everything right. He plays the game like Darrelle Revis, but instead of being like 5'10", he's like 6'1". So the only thing that you had against Revis was like, oh, he's kind of a little guy. Patrick Surtain is, from everything that I've seen, he's like a perfect cornerback. He even tackles well. But then on the other side, you got Damari Mathis, who was playing this last week against the Chargers. I'm watching that game. He had 4 pass interference penalties for 77 yards on the opposite side. It's not, they don't have a lot behind him either because they had Ronald Darby, but he's injured. And then they had another guy, Ojemudia, I believe he's not with the team right now. So it's like going to have to be Damari Mathis or somebody behind him that's even worse. Their nickel cornerback is Quinnen Williams, who's pretty good. Little guy, plays decent nickel corner, but still you got to get that other outside guy, potentially Damari Mathis. Take some shots on him. Broncos have good safeties. They got Kareem Jackson, who can come in like a rocket and hit you, plays with speed. Then they have one of the best safeties in the league in Justin Simmons. So another guy that's like just one of the best. They got these pass rushers. They got the cornerback. They got the safety. Justin Simmons just came back from injury last week. He's really good. Like, definitely one of the best safeties in the league, next to Kareem Jackson right there. And then you got Caden Stearns, who was injured, and he's coming back potentially this week, who's another good safety on that unit, a third guy. So they have guys. They got dogs in that defense, and it's going to be tough to score on them. It's currently one of the best defenses in the NFL, and it's keeping this team afloat. It's a 2-4 record. Without that defense, they could be 0-6, but like they've almost won every single game they've played because of that defense. When the Jets play them, it's going to be very hard to throw. It's probably going to be very hard to run as well. They tackle hard. They send relentless pressure. And if the Jets are going to win this game, it's probably going to have to be a really good rushing attack. We're going to have to feature Breece Hall, Michael Carter early and often, and it's going to have to work. If they're rushing for 1 yard a carry and Zach Wilson's forced to throw with this pressure coming, could be a tough day. The only other thing that could help them is perhaps schematic stuff. Tricky plays, getting Braxton Berrios the ball, bubble screens, finding a way to, just kind of outcoach a great defense and say, listen, we know what you do well. We're going to do other stuff that's going to counter it. And if Michael LaFleur can come up with that stuff and keep it out of Zach Wilson's hands in the event the rushing attack isn't working great, otherwise, I don't know. It's going to be tough. Overall, going up against the Broncos, it's another tough defense. The first of many that we're going to play this year, not even the first. We played one last week. We can't let their swarming nature make us beat ourselves. As they send guys off the edge, we can't have Zach Wilson flustered and panicked. We can't have a lot of fumbles. We got to play within ourselves. That defense is going to be strong all game, but we have to weather the storm, lean on our strengths. We've seen the coaching. We've seen the play calling. It's got to stay great, and maybe it's a low-scoring game. Maybe we've got the advantage in the special teams game. I think the Jets can pull this game off. You're talking about the 2-4 Broncos that I've watched on primetime football, and they don't look great, versus this Jets team that I've watched every game, of course, including preseason, and they always look great, barring, there were 2 games with Joe Flacco, but everything else has been awesome. I think the Jets win that low-scoring game, 19-13. The defense gets their season high in sacks, and Elijah Moore is targeted multiple times in the first quarter. What do you got, Katie?
Just sending up a mile-high prayer that Zach outscores this weekend. I feel like he's knocking on that door. I'm hoping 26-23.
Wow. Okay.
The Ripper sounds like a pretty good last name too. If he's playing, I don't know. We'll see.
Potentially. It's seeming like I've seen a couple like other things saying that Russell Wilson is in pain, but he's really trying to play this week. Something about it just like feels like early in the week. It's one of those things that gets you coaching like, oh, maybe we got to go up against Ripon and it's going to be a little bit different game plan. But then at the end of the day, it's going to be Russell Wilson. They just like kept us on our toes for a minute. Just like, oh, who should we game plan for? I bet Russell Wilson still plays, but the fact that he's having this hamstring injury could potentially. Is it possible that, again, the Jets are getting a quarterback at the right time? After the whole...
All I know is that Legatron better make his kicks.
He better make his kicks. He missed the one this week. He's down to 83% kicking percentage, which is not what we wanted to see. But...
we got to get the W.
We got to get the W. 5-2 would feel so good. 4-2 feels so good, but 5-2 would feel so good as well. And then 6-2 would feel great, too. And then just like until eventually 15-2 would feel great. But that's what I got for this one. Rate, review, subscribe to this podcast anywhere podcasts are found. Gang Green Nation podcast title, series title is This is the Jet Life. Follow me on Twitter at Jets_Dan. Follow this on YouTube. This is the Jet Life. Subscribe, rate, give it a thumbs up, a like, a comment. All that stuff is good. Much appreciated. We see all of it for sure. Thank Paycheck, of course, for coming down, talking Jets again.
Anytime. Go Jets.
Go Jets. Another great week. And see what we got for next week. That's it. I'm Dan Burnham. That's Paycheck. And this is the Jet Life.